Oh, and then he came in too.
It's Dustin.
Yeah. Dustin. Oh, I know Dustin.
Good.
Dustin, tell me your last name again. Patterson.
Okay, 5:45, a call open the public hearing regarding the closeout of the Downstate Small Business Stabilization Grant for Trendsetter Designs, funded by the Community Development Block Grant Funds of the state of Illinois pursuant to its response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The state of Illinois, through the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, repurposed $20 million in CDBG funds to stand up the Small Business Stabilization Program. The fund offered small businesses up to 50 employees the opportunity to partner with their local governments to obtain grants of up to $25,000 in working capital. This hearing covers the closeout of the grant awarded to Trendsetters Design, Inc. Copies of the closeout documentation is available on the Village's Board Doc link or by contacting Pat McCarthy at pmccarthy@chathamil.gov or calling 217-697-5809. As part of the requirements of this public hearing, a sign-in sheet must be completed of all in attendance. Madam Clerk, do you have the attendance
Yes.
of all those present? Thank you.
Yes, I do.
3 items to cover in this hearing is the amount of funds awarded. As the Village of Chatham is not a HUD direct entitlement community, we defer to the state of Illinois through the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity and their repurposed $20 million in CDBG funds that were made available to the Small Business Stabilization Program to make the final determination on the overall fund totals available. Qualifying small businesses via the local government were eligible to submit grant requests for up to $25,000. The state issued the grants on a rolling basis and made determinations on fund availability and access to this capital as applications were processed. Trendsetters Design was awarded a $25,000 grant under the state of Illinois' determination process. The program component made funds available for 60 days of verifiable working capital up to a grant ceiling of $25,000 and available for businesses that employ 50 people or less. These funds were used by Trendsetters Design to assist with that working capital. Trendsetters Design documented that they used the grant funding to support its working capital needs and was able to remain open for the required 60 days from the date of the award of the grant assistance. Are there any questions or comments for the public hearing for Trendsetters Design, Inc.? Hearing none, I will take a motion to close the public hearing on the CDBG grant closeout. Trustee Miles made a motion. Second by Trustee Charo. All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing stands adjourned.
Oh, we gotta wait till 6:00. Okay. Hello.
Save the seat for you.
All right. I like it right there.
She said they're taking care of snake told you about that. How they have to put grandma's day of death on there.
Oh.
Anticipate a long evening?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Nothing really controversial to vote on.
Okay.
30 to 40 days.
Chief of police is gonna be here.
No, it's ridiculous. And here's the deal. What we like to do is we want to have court once a month. So that way I can bring in, that gives me the law. We don't bring in cannabis. You say dogs, anything like that. If I get 30 to 60 days, that would open it up to make it much more easier. You know, then they just show up going back and say, okay, well, this guy was 30 days on this day, so I'm gonna have to have a special court hearing just for him. When if I had 30 to 60 days, it would open up more time for me to get, I could get more people into the hearing. Does that make sense? Okay, all right.
And then we're gonna start over on the other.
Okay, well, let me do this, why don't I, because we think, I mean, me and Kane's believe between 30 and 60 days is perfectly fine.
Some of them.
That's plenty of time. So what I'll do is, let me tell you what, I'll send you the order, so what ordinance it was, and where that, let's extend that from 30 to 40 days. 30 to 60
Said he was running late, but he didn't indicate that he wasn't coming.
If you want to claim Paul, Red's gonna be done.
Paul will be here.
So, I mean, I can touch base on that.
Kristen, you wanna sit up there on the, up there? Yeah?
Okay, is Brett gonna be here?
Maybe, he said he was running. I think so. Yes, I think Brett's gonna make it.
Yeah.
I got a hunch that he's gonna be.
Oh, there he is. He's gonna make it.
I might not.
Okay.
What is that?
Better take your name so I don't call you Paul.
Yes, there's actually two.
Well, I have to move his nameplate. Oh, okay, I will. I'll move it. There you go. Thanks. Just sit it like that. Sure.
You do.
He's the one that doesn't usually need it. Whoa. Pass this on, or is it just?
It's about time for us to see like we should.
So as the bond goes over, Dustin?
I was just teasing you, you know that.
Oh, I know. I'm not that sensitive.
Okay. It probably came out mean. I didn't mean it that way. I'm sorry. Usually I don't say a darn thing because I don't want to get my foot in my mouth.
Don't worry about that. I understood.
But I'm retiring.
You are.
I'm dead at the end of March.
You know, people say that, but they're never quite serious. Are you really retiring? Or you just,
No, I really am.
you're not going to work anymore?
I'm too old. They need somebody young in here.
Okay.
You know, Amy's a good age, but the thing is, she's got 3 children at home. She works. You know, it's too bad there's just somebody that doesn't have so much else on their plate, but
Yeah.
I mean, everybody does.
When are you retiring?
The end of March, I'm done.
End of March. Wow.
Well, because the new people will be coming in April,
Yes.
right?
Well, the election is April.
It'll be closer to me.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
They have to certify votes.
Yeah.
So the election is April 3rd, and then it'll probably be another month before they actually. I mean, mine was, I think, April 5th, and I didn't take office. And I think it was right around that first meeting in May.
Uh-huh.
So,
Okay. Well, I mean, I may be a little flexible with Amy if she's like really busy and she can't make it.
yeah.
But I really would like to end in March because I'm supposed to get my knee replaced.
Oh,
And so I'm thinking probably, because I got an appointment tomorrow to talk about it. So I'm thinking he's probably going to do it by April.
when you probably want to get it done while it's still slightly cold, so you're not dealing with it in the warm weather.
Yeah.
You'll be completely healed by spring, summer. Do you do planting or outdoor thing? Are you looking at garden or anything?
Yes, I want to get out my flower yard.
All right. Look at that. Thank you.
I mean, I enjoy it. You know, I could keep doing it, but it's just, it gets harder and harder. You know, just, I don't know why it gets harder. Because I guess I don't have as much energy.
Yeah. No, I get it. March makes sense to get your surgery.
Yeah. Yeah.
In our update,
Because you're going to want to get out there
you probably don't.
plant in April.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or can you?
So do you work during the day
First of
too?
December.
Not right now.
No.
Yeah.
Well, that's nice.
Stay inside during the winter is nice.
We didn't have a quorum, so we can't recommend anything to the board. But we can, I'll tell everybody what the discussion is.
Order.
Um,
Time?
they're gonna do it now, but that guy still has no clue. And this is, the manganese is going crazy. So that's what they shoot for .03.
But you know, I've seen a lot. I've seen a transition here, at
.03 or
least.
higher.
Well, once or
There's
twice.
.09
You know,
before,
with
there's
the
1 point,
board
there's
changing.
1, yeah. EPA is .05 is
Well,
what
every
we
2
shoot
years
for.
again.
Now, are all these met in the same spot?
Yes. And so you can see it's getting progressively worse. I mean, they were only in compliance with what our standards are 4 days in December. Now, they said January's gotten better. But, and we found out the reason why last night. They took away the alarms because the guy was probably sick of hearing the
Did you
alarms
watch
go off.
anything on TV today about the
And that's when it tells
impeachment?
you you need to adjust your
I did.
heed
Saw
for the hardness.
The argument.
So Bill is going to
Interesting.
help them
how
reinstall
that
the
play
alarms.
out.
Did they take a vote? Did you hear?
This was just whether or not the proceedings
Probably
were
0.05.
constitutional. And they agreed.
Because that's what they shoot for is
They
0.0. They shoot for 0.03, but 0.05 is what they have to be at.
And so that'll move forward in the next
To
few
be a
days.
tier 1 medical.
What?
That'll move
Whatever.
forward in the next
EPA has
few
two
days.
Yeah,
standards,
it'll
one's
drag out
0.05, the other's
probably.
like 1.15. We've never been over that.
Interesting time.
That would be non-potable water. Yeah, and that'd be non-potable water.
Look what I found. Mine now.
And he's got his new tennis shoes. He's ready, Dewey.
Well, for
They're just like yours, but they're like colorful.
tennis, same Nadal shoes, like the exact same.
Yeah.
So they came in different colors. I wanted the black pair. I had to pay a little bit more.
They're not cheap, but no tennis shoe is cheap. Like there's an Adidas pair I was looking to get, and they're like 120.
I saw another Nike pair I wanted, but I don't really need it.
Maddox was, they were like 140. But his feet are like way bigger than mine, so I can't wear his.
Yeah, it'd be nice to double up. Dave.
He's a little size 12.
It's crazy.
All right, 6 p.m. 6 p.m. We'll call this regular village board meeting to order. If you'd all please join me in a moment of silence. Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, could you take the roll, please?
Trustee Mann? Trustee Gerger?
Here.
Trustee Sharrow?
Present.
Trustee Detmers?
Here.
Trustee Mao? Trustee Churchill? President Kimsey?
Present. Any public announcements this evening? As we all are. Public comments regarding agenda topics? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to put the consent agenda on the table.
I'll make that motion.
Trustee Mao has made a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Charo. Any discussion?
The only question I had on, so now we're listing something as the police shop. Have we always had the police shop?
It used to be the garage down the street.
Okay.
It was the garage / water shop. Vern has inherited it over the last year.
Okay.
Madam Clerk, would you take the vote, please?
Trustee Mann? Trustee Gerger?
Yes.
Trustee Sharrow?
Yes.
Trustee Detmers?
Yes.
Trustee Mao?
Yes.
Trustee Churchill? Okay.
Good. No old business under new business. We have the closeout of the Downstate Small Business Stabilization Grant Fund and Trendsetter Design. We don't have to pass an ordinance or anything. It's just a motion to accept the public hearing as closed.
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Trustee Detmers, second by Trustee Charo. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 2 is an ordinance of the Village of Chatham authorizing the issuance of general obligation refunding limited bonds, Series 2021 of the Village, in the aggregate principal amount of $810,000 for the purpose of paying costs of refunding the Village general obligation limited bonds, Series 2017, paying costs of various roads and related infrastructure improvements, providing for the levy of direct annual taxes to pay such bonds and related matters. A motion to bring that to the table.
I'll make them.
Trustee Charles made a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Trustee Mao. We have any further discussion regarding this, or?
So the reason we didn't go out for bid is because you couldn't, Bank of Springfield had to wait. We couldn't get rid of them early, correct?
The current bonds that we're refunding had a no-call provision in it, so in requesting them to waive that, in requesting that waiver, this was
Right.
the ask on
If we wanted to do it with another bank, they would have just said, no, you can't call it.
certainly a possibility, yes.
Yep.
And they gave us a very, very good rate.
Yes.
Very, very good rate.
Moved down to 1.357%, so additional discussion,
Thank them
questions?
for that.
Clerk, would you take the roll?
Trustee Mann? Trustee Gerger?
Yes.
Trustee Sharrow?
Yes.
Trustee Detmers?
Yes.
Trustee Mao?
Yes.
Trustee Churchill?
Greg, this is corporate authority vote, right? Need 5. Madam Clerk,
Excuse me?
please record me as a yes.
Okay. Yes.
Item 3 is an ordinance amending Title 13 of the Village Code regarding cannabis and drug paraphernalia violations to add a definition for cannabis container. Motion to bring this to the floor.
I'll move.
Trustee Detmers made a motion,
Second.
second by Trustee Gerger. This adds the definition of cannabis container and clarifies possession of the vehicle in our code.
Have any questions or anything? Ryan's here, our code enforcement officer. We had
This was to bring us up to match state law?
an incident where an officer arrested a person. They had the stuff in a container. The way ours was worded, the judge ruled that ours just says a container that's hard to get into. It didn't specifically state that it was the original packaging. So we asked that we have that changed so that it matches up exactly with what the state requires, so. That'd pretty much cover it, right?
Yeah, I mean, Greg could actually comment on the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we add the definition of cannabis container, it's almost identical to the state statute dealing in talking with Attorney Keynes, we added the word original. State statute says the cannabis container needs to be the traceable sealed package from the distribution center. Mr. Keynes was worried about reusing that initial packaging over and over again, and resealing it at home. So we just put that it's the original packaging.
Okay.
But other than that, it just tracks state statute.
Madam Clerk, would you take the vote?
Yes, I will. Trustee Mann? Trustee Gerger?
Yes.
Trustee Sharrow?
Yes.
Trustee Detmers?
Yes.
Trustee Mao? Trustee Churchill?
Item 4 is an ordinance approving an amendment to Chapter 70 of the Village Code to prohibit the parking of roll-off dumpsters on village streets or right-of-ways. Can I have a motion to bring that to the floor?
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Charles made a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Trustee Detmers. Any discussion? This adds a prohibition of roll-off dumpsters on public streets, as advertised in the title.
What brought this forward? Do we have him?
Well, if the dumpster is on private property, the property that it's on is responsible for cleanup, for if fly dumping, if somebody is dumping stuff in it every night, they can file a report with the police and we can look into it.
Right.
The dumpster is sitting in the middle of the street or sitting on the side of the street.
Can't.
We can't. And Ryan can enforce that. The police can, that something is sitting in a public street. Ours talks about trailers, it talks about trucks and everything else, but it doesn't talk about these dumpsters. A year or two ago, a lady was coming home, come down Independence, sun was directly in her eyes, right into it. You can't see them, they're not. Some of them, different companies may have the reflective taping on them. Others, it's worn off over the years or it never was there in the first place. This way, put it up in the yard, you're responsible for it. Ryan can enforce.
That would be my question. If it doesn't fit in the driveway, they'll put it in their yard.
And they just put it in the yard, yeah. And if a contractor is building 2 or 3 at a time, he can put one on his empty lot and use that while he's working. So it will make things easier for the village and for the residents. I was worried that fire trucks would have tough times getting up and down streets, so.
Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, would you take the vote, please?
Trustee Mann? Trustee Gerger?
Yes.
Trustee Sharrow?
Yes.
Trustee Detmers?
Yes.
Trustee Mao?
Yes.
Trustee Churchill?
And item 5 is an ordinance approving amending original ordinance 19-27 that allowed for the purchase of a digger derrick from Alltech to a lower interest rate. Is there a motion to bring this to the table? Trustee Miles made a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Trustee Detmers. This modifies previously agreed upon terms of lease purchase agreement. That piece of equipment took, how long, Shane? 16 months? 16 months to be built and delivered. In that time, interest rate markets changed. The bank that had submitted the original winning bid on the lease purchase agreement agreed to lower the interest rate. So this modifies that ordinance as it had it noted. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Trustee Mann? Trustee Gerger?
Yes.
Trustee Sharrow?
Yes.
Trustee Detmers?
Yes.
Trustee Mao?
Yes.
Trustee Churchill?
Are there any additional public comments regarding any village business?
You guys have anything this evening?
Yeah, got a quick update for y'all. Hi, I'm Will Tracy. Been talking to you guys recently, I think.
Could you repeat your name? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Will Tracy.
Will Tracy?
Sorry to cut you off.
Okay.
But basically, we've got a diagram drawn up and a small update that we've got a committee for. People are pretty interested in it. We've got about 4 or 5 people signed up already, yet to put up the flyers and have let the community know that the whole effort's going on. But this is going to be on the corner of Magnolia and Gordon. I don't know if you guys so, buddy, mine and my mother's, he worked with biology, horticulture, botany departments throughout a number of schooling levels, mostly collegiate, like Purdue or Southern Illinois University Carbondale. And he was nice enough to help us sketch out some rough drafts of what the garden may look like and the possibility for private plots as well. So that's kind of what we came up with. And the question that we have for you is the village, if you guys could possibly provide some sort of mulch to keep the paths maintained instead of people walking through the grass and mud and whatever else due to seasonal weather. And as you said, possible allowance to use the fire hydrant and get some water there for just gardening and other uses like that.
What I'll do is, now that you've got a committee formed, I'll get you the information for the person that owns the property, and then you guys contact them, make sure that they see a copy of what you're proposing to do, okay? They said they were willing to allow you to use it, but they want to make something kind of halfway formal with you, so that you're, you know, you'll put it back.
Respect the property.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know if you guys would like any of these, but it's just a rough draft of the community garden bylaws, just if anybody were to sign up for.
I'm his father, Ted Tracy, and basically these are drafts. We have outside counsel going to help draft these. The question I have is, once we get these finalized and approved, and we're not approved, but at least a better draft. This is definitely a sketched out, the broad ideas that we want to get included. Do we run these bylaws and do we formalize them as an ordinance here, or these bylaws are just basically how we're going to manage the property?
Right now, since it's not a village piece of property, I think you would have some kind of agreement with the landowner, and you would show him what your bylaws are and what your plans are and everything else. And as long as he agrees with that and you guys agree with it, then you've got an agreement to be able to use that property, and if he's not going to charge you anything, then that should be in that agreement and stuff.
Okay.
There's really nothing there for the village to have to okay, because you're doing it as a volunteer group on a piece of property that you're being allowed to use voluntarily.
Okay.
So,
we'll definitely, this is my son, you have his contact, we'll get we'll have our people get on his people, and then we'll draft these, and we'll also run it through the village board here, just so everyone's on board, transparency. But yes, we're happy to share these, but these are so draft, and these are so raw,
Understand.
that it's not worth the time and effort, but we have an outside counsel that will draft some at a more professional opportunity.
that sound okay with you guys?
Yeah, I think that's appropriate with it being private land, is make your agreements with the private landowner.
If for some reason he changes his mind and does not allow you to use that, we could revisit, okay?
So back to his initial request on the water, that is a village challenge or village issue, and as well as, I know that there's
After we get it all set up and talk to the guy, would we be able to have access to the hydrant?
We'll have to look into that, see what it's available, and, maybe you put 55-gallon drums and let the rainwater, or we come by and fill those up on a regular basis, and you have, I don't know, those seep things or whatever they are. Yeah.
okay, all right, thank you.
Kind of come up with a plan, and we'll try to work with you on it.
Mr. Tracy, I emailed you in December, but I'm not sure that I heard back. Could you confirm your email address for me, just to make sure I send it to the right?
It's Will Tracy, 2345.
At Gmail, yeah.
Sorry, I'm taking that regular. Maybe
It's okay. No, it's all right. I just was trying to help you and look out for you, but I didn't hear back, so cool.
I'll definitely check for that.
Cool.
Back in December sometime.
Yeah, December 14th. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for coming in.
Any additional public comment? Hearing none. Scheduled meeting has the Planning Commission at 6 p.m. on February 18th, the Village Board 6 p.m. on February 23rd, Public Properties and Recreation Committee 6 p.m. on March 8th, Village Board 6 p.m. March 9th, with the Committee of the Whole to follow, and the Utility Oversight Subcommittee at 6 p.m. on April 12th. I would take a motion to hold the board meeting in recess until the completion of the committee of the whole to be reconvened for executive session.
I'll make that motion.
Trustee Detmer's made a motion.
A second.
Second by Trustee Guger. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting stands in recess.
All right, we're ready.
Right on time.
Yes.
Tell that was you, it's like.
Well, I got more whiskers.
I know, I guess so. Because I wondered that when he gets.
Call to order.
I'm like,
Call to order?
You're
The roll
ready?
call?
You're jumping from one to the next one.
Yep,
So ready for the committee of the whole?
yep.
Guys, we still have an additional meeting that we're going to get to tonight.
Yeah.
mentally.
There
Yeah,
you go.
there we go.
I grew up on board.
Go ahead, take roll.
Okay, we're ready? You do, okay. So we've already made the motion to start the next meeting, is that right?
Chairman Gerger has called his meeting.
Call to order.
Well, I guess he called with his gun.
Because I thought you called the other one adjourned.
On hold.
It's on hold.
It's on hold,
It's suspended. Now we're doing roll
so we only
call.
did one vote.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So, Ms. Matt. Trustee Mann. Trustee Gerger.
Here.
Trustee Charles.
Present.
Trustee Detmers.
Here.
Trustee Mao. Here. Trustee Churchill. Absent. And President Kimsey.
Present.
Okay.
Okay, any public comments on agenda topics?
Didn't receive any emails.
All right. Can I have a motion to bring the consent agenda forward?
Move.
Trustee Detmers,
Second.
second by trustee Charles. Discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. No old business. New business CMT engineering updates.
This thing on? Nope. Okay, a couple of items tonight. Probably one of the bigger ones. Recently, Pat, myself, and Shane sat down and we kind of looked at roadway improvements, infrastructure improvements as a whole throughout the village, and that really came out of some of the funding that's available to us at the village. Looking at MFT funds, looking at the Rebuild Illinois funds, looking at the recent bond funds that the village is obtaining, and just overall taking a look at that and saying, okay, what are we going to apply this to? As opposed to saying, I don't know. We wanted to develop a kind of a rolling 5-year plan in terms of what roadways are we going to focus on, what pre-construction activities do we need to ensure that those roadways are able to be worked on at those times, i.e. patching or something like that in advance of, say, bituminous overlays or other such infrastructure or utility improvements, and just making sure that village crews and have the equipment that they need to do their job, and that everything follows along on a schedule. So what we developed was kind of like a multi-phase approach associated with the improvements that we're doing. The first one with MFT funds is just kind of what we call the basics. These are going to be expenditures that we're going to do every year. They're going to be maintenance activities that either the village does in-house, or they'll be bid items that, for maybe a little bit larger, but still maintenance activities, and items that the village works with the township on, like oil and chip. So some of those items are going to be sidewalk and curb repairs, bituminous patching, winter maintenance, salt, roadside maintenance, rock shoulders, aggregate ditches, that kind of stuff. Traffic control devices and signs, so replacing street signs, stop signs, or getting traffic control devices, barricades, that kind of stuff. Seal coats, oil and chip, pavement marking, crack sealing, PCC patching, concrete patching, and bidding out bigger PCC patching activities. So these are things that we're going to put in the budget that we're going to do every year.
year in, year out, basic maintenance activities. From there, we're looking at some of the roadway improvements. We've kind of developed this plan where we're going to focus on major thoroughfares, high traffic volumes, ADTs, and then, also looking at the pavement rating systems to identify what the worst roadways are, and setting a priority that's a combination of high usage or roadway, and let that be the priority as opposed to just kind of squeaky wheel or, well, this one looks bad, it may not be as bad as it looks. So, we've identified the major roadways through town. We've taken a look at the ADTs, average daily traffic on those, and then compared that with the ratings. So, we're looking at, roadways such as Gordon Drive, Plummer, Oak Brook, Goldenrod, Mansion Road, Ptarmigan, South Main, Walnut, North Park, South Park, Teal Drive, Hurstbourne, Spruce, Mile Drive. So some of these bigger roadway systems that serve as more of a collector type roadway is going to be the focus of these major infrastructure improvements. We also still have roadways that we know are kind of the worst of the worst. There's a handful of these in the village that we've deemed that while we'd like to fix them, and while they may get this squeaky wheel and everyone's complaining about them, it's just, there's limited impact. It's at the end of a cul-de-sac. It has 50 cars a day. It isn't necessarily the best use of the village's money to spend $500,000 on a roadway that serves 25 people. But if things come available, funds come available, or crews are available to make these a little bit better, we can explore that. So roadways like Dewberry, Bristol, Keystone, Money Tree, Acacia, Peachtree, Jennifer Court, Chucker, Pheasant, Deerfield, White Oak, Evergreen, Aspen, Hampton. We know these are out there. So it's just going to be a function of how do we pick some of these things off without depleting all of our maintenance funds for larger roadways. From there, we're looking at kind of a rolling 5-year plan. How do we do this work? How do we get this moved forward? What projects are we going to do? And that serves both from a funding standpoint and from a maintenance standpoint. For example, the village has, in excess of $700,000 with the Rebuild Illinois funds. Those funds only apply to certain roadway improvements. Based on those roadway improvements, there's pre-work that the village has to do to bring those roadways up to standard, to be able to apply the funds to those roadways to make them a bondable type project. So, one option on that was looked at as overlaying Plummer Boulevard. It's in desperate need of an overlay. However, there's a significant patching that needs to occur. So if we can push, say, a Plummer Boulevard overlay project out a few years, but then have the road crew, village road crew, do patching for the next couple of years on that facility, it'll be in place for the time that we do the overlay. But we need to look at these projects, a few years out and be able to do that work. So, a couple of these larger projects that we've identified, Oak Brook, from Acacia to Peachtree, South Park from Walnut to the park entrance, Gordon Drive from Walnut to Oak Brook, or, the northern village limits, and then Plummer Boulevard from Ptarmigan to Route 4, and then Route 4 over to the Polecat Bridge, are some of these bigger infrastructure improvements that we have on this plan. So these can mix and match, be moved in and out as we need, but just having something on the books, this is what we're going to do, full transparency, this is the order that we're going to do them. So, the other item that we talked about internally is just some of the equipment necessary for the street crew to do this, and working with Shane and identifying some of those pieces that to make our own road crews more efficient and capable of doing the work. So just getting that out for budgetary purposes and staffing purposes to make sure that we can meet these needs if we're going to commit to doing this work. And then the last one is just kind of have a list of projects that, I'm going to say kind of pie in the sky. If unlimited funds were available, what would we go after? And maybe these are items that, we pursue with, state legislators. If there is a federal bill that comes out, and we explore those, such as, Pulliam Road interchange, southern east-west access route, Gordon Drive South, upgrading that to an urban section in conjunction with the culvert extensions that were done a number of years ago. Walnut Street widening into an urban section from Park to Gordon. So there's some bigger items that we have, kind of, summarizing all these in a placemat type of, document that whatever the needs are, whether it's a constituent asking, well, what roadway are we going to do next, or why not my road, or to a state legislator that would say, if you had $3 million, what would you do with it? So it's something that we're working with the village, developing this, making sure that we're all on the same page, all the way from administration, all the way down to the road crews that are actually doing the work. So, that's one big initiative that we've been working on over the past couple of weeks. Another thing I've been working on is with Dustin, looking at some of the funding for the parks and grant money that's available for that, and pulling together cost estimates and priority projects. We're looking at a utility locate project, subsurface investigation utility locate for the transite pipe, 12-inch transite pipe over by the S-curve. It's been hit a couple of times here, and trying to use modern technology to find some of the connections, some of the issues that we've had in terms of trying to isolate that pipe, turn it off in a timely fashion. There were some difficulties on the last time that we did that. And then assess that pipe for future use in place and or suggest replacements. Another project that we have is tied with the drainage at the electrical building. Pat and Shane have, approached me in terms of looking at that location also as a branch pickup site, putting in a concrete pad, doing electric gates, and using that as the branch pickup location there on the north side of the electric building. Obviously we know that drainage is an issue in that area, and trying to mitigate those issues in conjunction with this project and tying it all together. It is, there's likely that there will be some sort of a detention facility that will be needed to offset that, but we are looking at the drainage associated with impacts downstream, capacity of the water to get through the park area, but tying all this together in terms of a specific need as opposed to just recreation, and then try to mitigate some of the drainage problems that those homeowners have along the north side of the village property there. Working on an MFT update. There was a shift in some of the funds. We had the maintenance resolution from last year. Just due to COVID, there's some expenditures that we did not use, and then there's some additional expenditures that we did have that did not fit into that program. So we're balancing the money around a little bit, keeping it under the cap, and then resubmitting that to IDOT so we can have reimbursement through the MFT program. And then last one that I have, Oak Brook plans are completed. We talked about this last time. Initially, we were going to let a project here this past year in one phase. We decided to combine those into one larger project. So have a set of plans into IDOT, Oak Brook from Acacia to Peachtree, which will be similar to the last segment of Oak Brook that we did. So that's about it that I have on my agenda. Any questions?
Thank you for the update on the drainage at the village electric shed, and also thank you for the planning on the roads. I think it's very much needed and appreciated.
Very good, thank you.
Shane and Barry have been pretty involved in that long-range plans.
Yeah.
And shout out to Shane and Barry. The roads this last couple of days have been good. I know it's challenging with the salt and the temperatures, and thank you guys. Yeah, thank you guys. It wasn't hazardous going into work. That's appreciated.
If you could fix the cold while you're out.
Yeah, if you could warm it up, that'd be great.
It is not looking good for the rest of February.
Mr. Daggs.
Well, it's somewhat alive.
So next we have the Chief of Police, 2020 synopsis, Mr. Foley.
Yeah, just real quick. Just kind of want to go over things. This is basically a highlighted version of 2020. This is definitely it's a broad overview of the police department, kind of what we do. So I kind of let off with K9 Dags. He's been around for 5 years. Just kind of an overview. I don't want to.
It doesn't seem like 5 years.
No, it doesn't.
Wow.
It's right at 5 years. It'll be 5 years in August. But, kind of just going over things here real quick. We do a lot of training. There's a lot of mandated training for DAGs. So we do a lot of training hours. That's probably, he does at least twice a month, 8 hours, 16 hours a month. So we do an extensive amount of training. No dog is perfect. So he does go for the training aspect of it. And he does about, looks like 1,288 hours, 1,288 hours. Obviously, part of DAGs is we do a lot of programs for the local scouts, Boy Scout troops, Girl Scout troops, and other demonstrations. So he did quite a few of those as well. And moving on, it looks like 8 different tracks. And he makes note of the fact of with a 16-year-old mentally challenged male. DAGs is a single-purpose dog. He only does tracking purposes. He does not do any bike work or anything of that nature. 108 different narcotic deployments. We also partner with the DEA, the PAC, which is ISP, that's their PAC unit, their drug unit, and also obviously with their own department. DAGs has come a long way since day one. I think Pat can attest to that, and I can too as well. I as well, because when we got DAGs initially, he was with another department. He was with the Department of Corrections, and he was very
Aggressive.
Yeah, aggressive. So Jake has done a wonderful job with DAGs. He's really calmed him down. I can't speak enough about with Jake and as far as what he's done with DAGs. But DAGs has come a long way. And then obviously you can see that he has met the Training Standards Board, their rules and stuff to be certified. And also the fact of, as you can read there, most recently, DAG scored a 200 out of 200 on the most recent event that he had went through for challenge purposes. And as up to 2020, which he's been deployed 54 times in 2020. But as you can see there, you kind of take the comparison with Springfield. They deployed a little over 100 times, but 54 times is quite a bit considering with COVID. And the fact is that Springfield has a dual purpose dog, which has, narcotics tracking and bite work, whereas DAGs is a single purpose, and he's been deployed 54 times. So I can't speak enough about DAGs and Jake, and they do a great job, and with each other, they're a great combination. Any questions on DAGs?
Oh, thank you, guys.
Do you guys need the chief?
No, we're just listening.
Oh, okay.
I hope not.
When they popped in, they looked at just make sure.
Say something nice about me.
Yeah.
Talk about the dog.
No, DAGs is great.
So the total deployment is 164 in his 5 years, right? 54 of which were last year?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yes, sir. Yep.
You count his sniffs, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, he's a busy individual. Very busy. So kind of moving on to the next thing. As you can see, I put the police fleet report in front of you as well. This is kind of, once again, an overview of where our department's at as far as fleet-wise. As you can see, we have 18 vehicles listed. We're currently staffed with 15 officers, including myself. So that does leave 3 additional vehicles that we use as backup vehicles. The reason why I bring this to your attention is you can see, obviously, that the 3 vehicles that are older, they do have some mileage on them. And even currently today, that we do have a couple of vehicles you see listed, one being the K9 vehicle with 130,000 miles almost, and then another vehicle with 104,000 miles. And you can see kind of what it's costing to maintain those vehicles, which it does get up there price-wise, expense-wise, and everything else. So in 2017, we purchased, in 2018, we purchased no new squad cars. In 2019, we purchased 3 new squad cars, and this most recent budget year, we budgeted 0. So I guess what I'm heading towards is I'd like to see a more steady trend on how we purchase vehicles. I'm trying to get a couple, if not 3 each year, as opposed to kind of what we're doing now. We're kind of 3 1 year, none, 1, 3, or whatever. And that kind of goes along with the study that was done by, I can't think of who the study was done. The study was done 3 years ago.
Matrix.
Thank you. Their recommendation is 7 years, 100,000 miles. Well, as you can see, we've got, let's see here, 3 vehicles that are, 2 vehicles that are 14 years old. So that's something that we really need to take a look at, is trying to keep our fleet updated as much as possible. So that's kind of a brief overview on the fleet of where we stand. Any questions? The last sheet that I gave you kind of speaks for itself. Give you stats for the last 5 years, from 16 up to 2020, as far as where we're at. Calls for service, as you can see, from 2016 at 7,786 calls to 2020 up to 11,000 calls for service. So as the community grows, you see obviously our calls for service have jumped up tremendously. So that's one thing I just want to impress upon the board, that the community grows. I'd like to see the police department grow. We were 16 officers 4 years ago. We're currently 15 officers for the last 4 years. So I would like to see this board, and moving forward, to possibly put on at least 1, if not additional 2 to 3 more officers, if at all possible. I know that comes down to funding and budget and everything else. I get that. But I would definitely like to see the board take a more active role into trying to have the funding available for more officers. With that, you can see that the fact is breaks it down into index crimes, drug arrest, citations, and written warnings. I want to go over citations and written warnings real quick, because I know sometimes we get people think that all the police department does is stop people and write tickets. Well, as you can see over the years, do we write a lot of citations? Yes, we do. We do write quite a few citations. But you can also see the fact is that this past year with COVID, we wrote 885 citations with 3,198 warnings. That's a lot of warnings. But we are very proactive. We're very proactive for a reason. We're very proactive because we don't want the issues that our other neighboring, whether it be Springfield or other small towns around us, that are having the problems that they're having. We're trying to be proactive. We're trying to prevent anything else as far as from occurring. Moving on, I think the stats kind of speak for themselves. One thing I'll highlight is the theft. Typically that theft is usually to a motor vehicle. It's not stealing a motor vehicle, but people leaving their doors unlocked. We try to educate the public as much as possible, but as you can see, we still have quite a few reports that we've taken over the years for that. Moving down, you can see as far as the cannabis. I know there's probably some questions on it. A lot of questions from in 2016 under the Cannabis Control Act, going from 37 all the way down to 1 to 2020. Well, obviously with the regulations, with the laws changing in 2017 with the decriminalization of cannabis and such. So as you can see, that we did change our ordinance, which I'm thankful for that. So as I noted in 2017, you can see that we picked up quite a few paraphernalia / cannabis citations, which is being handled internally with our local court, which then in turns, obviously the money comes back to the village as opposed to going to the state. So we have been very proactive in pursuing that avenue as well, as far as moving forward. Any questions as far as an overview of the police department?
I have a few questions. Of the department, of the people in the department, you said you want to see it expand and grow as a community grows. in that, how many, patrol officers do you have that are eligible for promotion to become sergeants? And do you want to see that number expand as well, or what, what I'm trying to say, do you want to see the patrol officers expand and the sergeants expand, or just the department as a whole?
Absolutely. I mean, right now we're fortunate we have a deputy chief along with 3 sergeants. A 4th sergeant would be phenomenal, even a lieutenant or a captain's position. But we definitely need to improve or try to get more patrol officers first. That's first and foremost, to get more people out in the street, more people into other units and stuff. We do have 1 investigator, but I use that word loosely, investigator, because he's kind of a part-time investigator. The reason for that is because he's counted as manpower for being used on the street. So it's very difficult to take that investigator to be part of the calls for service during the day and then turn on to investigations at the same time. It makes it very difficult. We are fortunate enough to have one of our sergeants. He's called what's called a TFO. He works part-time with the local FBI office. So we're fortunate enough to be able to do that. But obviously what I'd like to see moving forward is, if we were fortunate enough to be able to hire a couple officers, or even maybe 1 officer, I talked to the mayor and to Pat as well, is trying to get in with the Illinois State Police with their drug task force unit. I'd like to see maybe possibly put an officer in there full-time. That would, with that task force unit, there would be possible monies coming back into the village if things were seized and so on and such. The task force unit is controlled by the Illinois State Police, but they go around to different communities. So that task force officer wouldn't be specifically in Chatham the whole entire time, but with everyone dwindling as far as resources and stuff, we would have obviously a better opportunity if we do have someone in that task force. They're more apt to obviously work your area more than the other surrounding communities.
With the task force, if we had an officer in the task force, when they do a seizure or forfeiture, would we get a cut from that then?
Absolutely, yes. And I don't think you'll ever have enough seizure money to be able to pay for that officer full time, but it will definitely come back into what I'd like to say is the coffers back into the village. That's something we definitely would like to expand and look at moving forward.
If we put a person in that task force, would that pull away from their duties here?
Well, that's why I'm asking for an additional officer. That's one reason. I'd like to have a couple officers. I'd like to, we talked about working with the school, trying to get a resource officer. That's kind of, trying to work with the school. We applied for a grant this past year. Unfortunately, we did not receive the grant for that. Right now, the school is kind of working on their own as far as having their own security out there and such. Right now, there's not an officer out there, especially with the whole COVID stuff.
In the state legislature passed the revisions to criminal legal whatever. And in that, I thought I read that they want to get rid of resource officers. Is that correct? They talked about that?
Yeah, there's a lot of language in there that is not pro-police, and that's something that you will see possibly as board members. I've been in touch with our local Senator McClure, and also with Representative Murphy. They're definitely pro-law enforcement, so they get it, they understand it. Just give you an example real quick. In that House bill, I think it's House Bill 3653, in that specific House bill, as the way it's written right now, if just to say a local business was to call and say, hey, they're having a problem with Jim Smith won't leave, he won't leave customers alone, he needs to leave. Well, under the current act, that if the mayor does sign it, if Jim Smith's causing a problem, all we can do is go over there and ask Mr. Smith, hey, Mr. Smith, please leave the business. If he won't leave, we can't do anything. We can enact an ordinance locally and write him an ordinance for criminal trespass, but we physically cannot put hands on Mr. Smith and take him off the property. I know that's one of the big things with House Bill 3653, along with numerous other things, but that's something that would definitely affect the businesses locally here. It's not uncommon for our department to issue what I refer to as a criminal trespass to a resident. We get that quite frequently, but depending on if House Bill 3653 passes with no additional amendments, which I think there will be. But I think we're in for a rough road coming up here in the next few years.
Thank you.
Thanks for the update. Thanks for what your team
Thank
does.
you so much.
Thank you.
The village manager update.
I've just got 2 items to fill you guys in on this evening. First one is when we redid the customer service manual, and we set a date. It was ordinance 20-36. We set a date of that we would go back and start doing shut-offs, and that was going to be for the bills that were due May the 15th. Now, I had Chrissy and Jamie across the street run some numbers for us, and we started the payment plans back up. We had, as of now, we had 125 at a peak of payment plans. That's down to 95, so a few people have paid their stuff off or moved. Of those 95, 53 of those have fallen behind or have not made payments, but the remainder, 42, are sticking with the original plan. That puts about 235 people that if we did shut-offs this month, they would get the notice that we were going to shut them off. In the past, that number was up around 400. So that's encouraging that people have been able to keep their bills up in a really, really tough time. So one of the things that we were trying to think of is, we were going to go back to doing shut-offs in March. We'd like to go ahead and move that back till the end of May. So if your May bill is due, then you'd get shut off at the end of May. That gives people a couple more months. It also allows them, if they get any kind of tax returns, to be able to try to catch up with those tax returns, or with the stimulus checks that's coming from the government, might be able to help them get back on their feet and get everything caught up. So if you guys are all right with that, I'd like to have Greg adopt that or change the ordinance so that we change that to.
So we talked about this in committee last night, and it was actually me and Mr. Packelhofer, so we can't make any recommendation, but we both thought that an extension would be due to stimulus funds coming in and that kind of thing. We didn't see any harm, no foul, especially with the number being that low.
It's a workable number now.
But it's up to us. I mean, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
It depends on.
The staff was okay with it.
Could you repeat your numbers for me, please? 125 payment plans at peak. It got down to 95.
Right.
That's the current number. 53 of those 95 have fallen behind.
Right.
And then you said something like 250 would be shut off.
Yeah, Chrissy ran and said, I think it's it was 235.
You could have said that. I just going from memory because I was like.
I think I said
Confused as to how
253 and it was actually 235. 235 right now are behind at least 1 month on their bill.
Okay.
So they're not in a payment plan.
53 of which
Or on
are on a payment plan.
No.
Behind.
42 are on a payment plan. 53 are behind on their payment plan. And then the rest of them are new fall behind since we've enacted the no shut off.
Thank you.
So if you guys are interested in doing that, we'll have Greg rewrite that ordinance and we'll adjust that and move it.
Yeah, I think the further we go out, the better. That's my personal opinion. Obviously, I think we have to be mindful of the budget, but it's good to hear that there were 125 plans at a peak, so that means we made the right decision there. And I do appreciate those that have been able to keep up with it. So thank you.
So you're okay with extending?
Yes.
Trustee Charo?
Yes.
Trustee Menard?
Well, I'm not opposed to the extension of it. It doesn't surprise me though, as I stated at the time, that this concern that, where do we draw the line and keep pushing back and back and back? I mean, that's the concern I have. And again, we've extended it again. Are we gonna do it again? There has to be a stopping point somewhere.
The numbers that they're at now are manageable. If we truly have that group of people in town that are in trouble because of COVID and being laid off and not working, bars are just starting to come back, restaurants are starting to come back. The economy's trying to get going again. And I think that and the stimulus, as well as maybe tax returns, might be able to help some of these people get on their feet. Adding 2 more months is not going to put us in any danger in any of our funds and stuff like that. So
Are we still letting them, and I know it's not our job to tell them each month, hey, there's LIHEAP, there's this program, there's that program.
there really isn't that many programs for the residents of Chatham. LIHEAP is pretty much it. If you look at the rest of the stuff that Springfield offers, those are tied to a lot of their churches and other organizations that we just don't have down here. And the churches have asked us to stop sending people to them. Okay, so
The two biggest ones that are applicable to most Chatham residents is either LIHEAP or one of the your applicable townships general assistance fund.
yeah.
Those are the two places to start first. And both those two, I always make the encouragement is go sooner rather than later. Because like any government funded program,
Money runs out.
money runs out. And so don't wait for the notice as soon as there's an indication that you're falling behind. Ask those questions of the township's general assistance fund and try to get the appointment for a LIHEAP interview.
So Greg, it looks like there's 3 of us here that are,
I think that's enough to draft it and put it on the
Yeah.
agenda.
I think Trustee Churchill's been on the utility committee, and in the past, he's been okay with this.
The office staff is great about trying to assist people to get help just about anywhere. They'll go out of the way to be able to help those folks. So,
Call them. They're good at what they do. Call them.
Okay.
the other item that I wanted to talk about tonight was a little bit of a spinoff from Vern's. It's our vehicles. Okay, our mechanic retired and left us a couple months into this fiscal year. Okay, and we didn't replace him at the time and decided to go with outside services. Okay. And I asked Sherry to go back and look at 2019, 2020, and where we're at so far in 2021. The parks, and this is counting parts, outside maintenance, what the mechanic's salary was, what the mechanic's employee benefits package was, and then it adds up to a total. Last year in parks, we had $31,467. In 2020, it was $32,455. And so far this year, it's been $22,000 with 3 months to go. And that pattern has stayed the same or even a greater. Say, for instance, the street department, we use $72,639 in maintenance in 2019. That went up to $83,000 in 2020. We've only spent $43,000 on repairs to the street vehicles so far this year. So Sherry said we're not even at 60% on that one. And it's the same thing for the police, the electric, the water. It totals out that right now we're still $100,000 under where we were at last year at the end of the year. So I know there was concerns that we were using outside services, but those are the actual numbers. Now, does it put our guys in that they don't have a vehicle maybe for 3 days, where before we might have been able to get it fixed in one? Sure. But if you look at the numbers and look how much we chart, we've been spending in parts, we're having less repairs this year. We're either having less repairs this year, or the difference in what that mechanic's salary was in his benefit package is making up a huge, huge difference. So
I imagine that many of our staff is still doing a lot of maintenance on their own, right? I mean, they may not be certified technicians, but many of the guys that I've met are very, very capable of things. So
we have a few guys that will turn around and tackle some of the items. We have a gentleman that works in the parks. We worked it out with the union that so many hours a week he comes in. He'll do oil changes for our trucks and for our cars and stuff. He gets paid a little bit higher. He gets paid the mechanic's wage when he does those times and stuff. We'll look at that. When the contract for the operators is up in May, and that will be open for negotiations whether we decide to replace that position or not. A new hire would come in as a tier 2 mechanic with tier 2 benefits. So that may be an advantage to be able to find that specific niche. If we need somebody that's a hydraulic mechanic or a diesel mechanic, and we can find that, if we can keep that person busy, that's the whole thing. We'll have to be able to find something to keep them busy. When we need him, on a minute's notice in the wintertime, might be a little dry during the summer and stuff because we're not using those big trucks all that much and taking the beating of having a great big piece of steel hanging off the front end of them, dragging across the ground. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on where we were at on that. Any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Public Property and Recreation Committee discussion.
we have not met since our previous committee of the whole meeting. However, we did again announce that there's likely an opening within that committee, and we have received some applicants. So I'm hoping that those will all be reviewed and we can move forward with that additional replacement. In that line, we may have some revisions to the ordinances that govern that committee, and I'm working on drafting those changes, and I'll bring it forth to this board for considerations.
Anyone, any discussion, questions for Dewey?
One last item. We did touch on the park project briefly under the CMT update, but that grant process is moving forward. I think Dustin and his team are gathering quotes for the projects that we identified as being a priority and moving forward. So excited for that. Thanks.
Thank you. Utility Oversight Committee discussion, and that's what it will really just be because there's only 2 of us last night. But we were lucky enough to have Bill Brown there, the SSWC plant manager that was there, and then Jim Roth, the chair. So they have not voted to do chloramines. They voted to go after the license and the permit from the EPA. Pat brought up that, well, we've already been through this because we were all the way to the finish line with the electronics. Well, they're doing it again. The first vote was 2-1, which majority rules. It seems as though the plant manager understands that now and is willing to go to chloramines. Bill was very adamant about getting that. And then we talked about they have a need for a valve that will go at the above ground storage tank that will prevent a pressure loss on their system when when electric failure happens and they can't produce the water. Dustin is looking at that with them, the contract, because we want certain provisions in there that if our tank gets to a certain level, we want to shut that off so it doesn't affect our service. We kind of indicated to them last night that we would want chloramines to be in place before we would even entertain that type of discussion. And I think Mr. Ross heard that loud and clear, and the plant manager did. Then we got into manganese. So I've given you guys all a monthly report. If you're a geek like Dewey, you'll go through it and he'll really analyze it,
Circle some things.
circle some things, highlight some things. Mr. Brown can answer any of those. So we seem to have had a problem with manganese again, and so much so in December that we were only 4 days to where we were at, or what we wanted to be at, 0.03. We were at 0.05 on or higher on a lot of days. And so we're not feeding the permanganate, sodium.
They said last night that they were feeding the sodium.
Right.
But because.
But then we got to the gist of it.
Yeah.
There used to be alarms.
Yeah.
And they would go off when you had to feed it because there was too much getting through. They didn't like hearing the alarms, so they undid them. They took them off. So Bill Brown has a plan to get the alarms put back on so the plant manager can now feed the sodium permanganate when it needs fed. So we stay at that 0.03 desirably, but definitely below 0.05. So it did seem as though Bill was on it, and he seemed frustrated by it. Would you agree, Pat?
I think he's beyond frustrated.
Yeah. So it does appear that and he would not give us a date for chloramines because he's like, it's CEP, and I get that you're relying on the federal government and you're relying on other providers, but he did say that he would say it would be in place before the summer, and should we have to take CWLP water. But that's the updates we have for that. And then we talked about the extension of the payment plan, or not the payment plans, but just not shutting off for a couple months. And Mr. Packelhoff and I were open to that, and that's what we have on that. Any questions?
If you get the opportunity, I'd love to see a list of the items that need to occur before chloramine conversion can continue. It still shocks me that we don't have that list readily available. And
From my understanding, it is EPA permit, and they've got the SCADA provider, they've got to get this software, because they switched software. That's where they got to the final hurdle last time, and the software just blew. And that provider they've switched SCADA software provider, so that's what they're waiting on. But he did have an actionable list.
And when they talk about SCADA, what they're talking about here is the SCADA tells the system how much ammonia or
to feed
to be able to get the chloramine levels right based off of what pH and everything else, hardness and all that.
The brain of the system.
Yeah.
It's gonna read different readings throughout the system and then tell it to feed different chemicals different amounts, and that's how it works. You don't have to manage manually.
Yeah.
The machine does it, so.
And like Bill had said over and over, once you get it and you dial it in, it should be pretty good. You don't have to worry about it standing there. And it has an alarm system to be able to tell you that, hey, something didn't work.
Unless we disconnect it. So hopefully
Unless
we won't.
they disconnect it.
Hopefully we
The
won't.
acronym I always have to look the acronym back up, and then it explains what SCADA is, but it's
Yeah.
supervisory control and data acquisition. So it's the brain, so that somebody doesn't have to sit there and constantly read every single meter.
We have a SCADA system here that manages the electric as well as water. Sits in that room right in there. Dustin's got a double screen that he's able to see what's going on with the water system. You can see where the levels are rising, going down, why we have dips in different things. They have the same thing, only theirs is a little more elaborate because it's for a whole plant, and they still have to monitor the pressure as it goes throughout their whole system. And they see ours, they see New Berlin's.
Right. Okay, that's all we had. Employee survey discussion. So we did get the employee surveys back. It was a decent response. Not great. We got 31 out of 51. And we'll discuss those in a closed session. Just, that's how it should be discussed. Village manager qualifications, I have a call into,
Dr. Funderburg.
yep, and I haven't been able to talk to him yet. So as soon as I talk to him and do a little bit more research, we'll have there's nothing really to discuss tonight about that. Scheduled meetings, committee of the whole is March 9th, 2021. Can we do a utility committee on March 8th? Because we had nobody there last night, and I know they're going to want to discuss. And then we have a need for, do we have a need for closed session for us?
You need to change your time because the parks meets on the 8th.
Oh, at 6?
Yeah, we're not moving.
What time are you guys usually done?
Whenever we're done. No, I'm just kidding. It usually goes pretty quick. I don't know what the agenda looks like.
So if we did 7?
Call it 7 or thereafter.
7 or thereafter?
You could just come at 6 and check out.
I will.
Yeah.
I'm going to, I'm going to heckle.
Or call it 6:05 or thereafter.
Yes.
Start tapping your watch as soon as Dewey's.
6:30 or thereafter.
I imagine it would be a fairly fast one.
Do we don't have a need for closed session for this.
You have public comments.
Yep. Any public comments? No? Nothing in the emails?
Nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, close this.
All right. I have a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Second.
Trustee Detmers, second by Trustee Charles. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Now, Ms.
Take a
Kinsey
motion
will,
to reconvene the village board meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Trustee Gerger, seconded by Trustee Charles. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And now I lost my list to make sure I get the. Greg, tell me if I missed one, but, entertain a motion to move to closed session to address topics under personnel at 2C1, collective negotiating at 2C2, setting the price for the sale of public property, and also 2C5, purchase or lease of real property for use by a public body.
Make
And
that motion.
2C11, briefly discuss some litigation.
For the full meal deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Trustee Gerger has made that motion.
What he said.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Trustee Detmers. Madam Clerk, would you take a roll call, please?
Trustee Mann? Trustee Gerger?
Yes.
Trustee Shara?
Yes.
Trustee Detmers?
Yes.
Trustee Mao? Left.
Haley?
Trustee Churchill? President Kinsey?
Yes. Okay, there'll be no additional business after the closed session, so since we use this room to follow our COVID protocols, we ask anybody that's not involved in our executive session to safely and warmly head home or somewhere else.
No,
A majority of a quorum.
I'll stop